All right, guys, thanks so much for joining me. Ryan here, and I have with me here Paul. Paul, how do I say your last name?
Widelski.
Widelski. Awesome. And I'm really excited to be talking to Paul today, specifically because one of the things that we deal with in the boot camp is this idea in the game arts, is this idea that you're either stylized or you're realistic. And, I'm sitting here looking at Paul's art station. It's like, Paul, you've run the whole gamut. It's pretty awesome. I think it's really neat, and where you got in the industry and where you are today, I'm fascinated to kind of dig in and learn more. So let me remind everybody the way this operates. We'll open this up for Q&A, but please, by all means, throw your questions out as you get them for those of you who are in here live with me, and I will kind of pepper those in with my own so that we'll be able to have the conversation going. And then, Paul, if you don't mind, why don't you throw up like your ArtStation or something just so people have something to look at. And I don't know if you have a presentation in mind, like you have a bunch of imagery. But I guess what I would really love to start with is just to give me a sense of what you do today.
So at the moment, I'm a character artist at Splash Damage. And yeah, I work on Gears Tactics. It's just been announced at E3.
Yeah.
So I'm doing stuff for that.
Cool. And what does that mean? And especially because it says you're a senior character artist. So what does that mean? How's it different than a junior? How's it different than a lead? How's that work?
So it just means I do more stuff outside of the pure character art pipeline. Like I help out with a bit of a tech side as well, investigating new workflows and things like that. So the senior just means a bit more responsibility and more like investigation rather than just being a sort of like assembly line kind of thing.
Yeah.
You're looking at outside.
Okay.
More.
So what does a day look like at Splash Damage? Of course, not sharing anything proprietary or anything, but just in general sense, you get into work. Are you right away starting on projects that you had? Do you have meetings? How's the general day look?
So yeah, generally I'll have like a project I'm working on, like
Mm-hmm.
a head or like an armor set or something like that.
Yeah.
So I'll have that running. I'll be doing that all day, and generally I'll get people asking me about maybe some issues with rigging or something that happened before, or people asking about texturing side. So generally I'll be doing stuff all day with just little bits and pieces coming up throughout the day.
Yeah. And are you responsible for other people, like management or anything of that nature?
No, we have quite a small team in the characters,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not managing anyone directly. It just means I help more with like outsourcing, for example.
Right. Got it. Okay. And then a small team. So does everybody kind of have their own project that they're on, or does everybody help out from one project to another? What kind of things do you end up finding yourself working on?
Yeah, generally people work on their own thing, but yeah, we all like help each other out, and we'll review each other's work and see what we can learn from each other. So it's a really nice environment in that kind of way.
Got it. Great. And then let's talk a little bit about how you got here. Like, what got you into game arts?
Right. So I was really bored one day, and I
Okay.
started playing some mods back when I was like 19.
Yeah.
So I was just looking into like retexturing stuff, and so I I wanted to retexture some things, and I realized I had to learn UV mapping, and then from UV mapping I learned some modeling, and it all sort of snowballed, and I found it really interesting. And then I started like making guns, like every 3D artist does.
Yeah.
And one day I wanted to expand out of that, and my friend was like, well, why don't you have someone holding those guns? So I tried to do some character art, realized I couldn't draw or sculpt, so I sort of started learning and watching tutorials and things like that.
Yeah.
But all the while still doing like other 3D things, but practicing my characters as well. So from that, I got my first job at Sony in Gorilla Cambridge, making guns for the PSVR game rigs.
Hmm.
And during that time, I was practicing on my own character art stuff at home, like doing lunchtime sculpts, always having a project on in the background. And then eventually I moved on to splash damage, or I was doing more gun making and environment art things as well.
Hmm.
And eventually the art director for the game I'm on got wind of my aspirations to be a character artist, and they gave me a shot. So here I am today.
Sweet. What does it mean they gave you a shot? Well, do they give you a character or an art test or a project?
No, well, he told me that because in my portfolio I had a lot of mainly stylized stuff. I was doing a lot of stylized stuff at the time.
Yeah.
And he advised me to like do a realistic project. So so I went in and I made Ash from the Alien movie. So I did a sculpt of him, and I learned a lot about realistic sculpting and facial sculpting.
Mm-hmm.
And so that helped. And also doing lunch crunches every lunch, like gets word goes around that you do that kind of thing, that you're really into it. And yeah, that helped as well a lot.
Oh, that's awesome. So you were in the community, Danny's community, the Lunch Crunch, before they shut it down?
Oh no, sorry, I mean just like my own lunchtime sculpts at work.
Ah, cool.
And
Okay.
people talk.
Okay, got it. So that's not a common career path, is it? Not that game arts has that, but most people don't go from guns to character. Or am I wrong?
No, it is a strange one. A lot of people have told me that, yeah, we don't really see that kind of thing. But,
Yeah, most people I know that do hard surface, they like get really into hard surface. It goes from guns to just like environments and sci-fi kind of stuff. So,
yeah,
did you teach yourself anatomy? How'd you get yourself ramped up on all that?
yeah. So at first, I didn't have any anatomical knowledge,
Hmm.
and so I just went like right to the basics, just drawing, and just got like sketchbooks full of just like rubbish that I started with, and eventually I played around in Mudbox a bit, doing some sculpting there, and then I bought some books on ZBrush, actually one of your books,
Huh.
and that helped me get started, like to navigate around
Yeah.
and to get a good sense of how to start and finish a character project.
Cool. Okay. So largely self-taught, just, like most of us are actually. Great.
Yeah.
And
Luckily, like at the time, there were just loads of things going out on YouTube, and like digital tutors and all that stuff was like really ramping up. So it was a great source for that.
right. Yeah, I remember that. So what are some of the problems that you run into as a artist today? What is a frustration that, just you still have after all this time?
The sort of feeling that I'm getting out of practice, like I do a lot of sculpting at home and drawing and stuff like that, just to keep up with it. And one of my frustrations is that I don't have enough time, really.
Do you feel like you have to keep up with everything and like there's competition, or is this kind of just you're driving yourself to be better?
I think it's a mix of both. Like it's really rewarding seeing yourself like progress and like learning new things, even just like the small little anatomical details. But it's always great to just learn more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And just like a self-imposed kind of thing.
Can you walk us through one of the characters?
Yeah, sure. Well, just from concept to finish.
Yeah, so one of the things that I like to tell people in the boot camps is that it's not important for you to be kind of a master of all things, but that there are certain triggers, there are certain things that are very important, and you're hitting a ton. Like this just looks incredibly beautiful. So I'd love to just hear like how did you approach it? What shortcuts did you take, if any, and the software that you used, things like that.
So yeah, with characters that I design myself, I
Hmm.
like to start off doing some concept sculpts, getting together like a pure ref full of things that like inspire me or sort of in the general theme. Um, I like to sort of write a brief backstory just to kick things off, and like just do a lot of drawing and research, like from like books or games or movies or anything that sort of inspires that character. So once I've got like a general idea down, I'll start doing uh, just a nude body just for a base. So it sort of doubles up as an anatomy study as well. And yeah, then I'll just start making blobby shapes and then polishing them out into the proper high polys. There's a lot of going back and forth, doing like paint overs and things like that. I'll just bring up some of the stuff I was doing. It's like, yeah, I'll go back, do some paint overs and designs of things that need to be fleshed out along. So I don't start with a fully realized concept. I just start with like a path to go down, and then certain themes I'll stick to. So, for instance, with this guy, his theme was like he's sort of like an arrogant noble, and he's sort of it's like basically a lot of inspiration was from Game of Thrones, right? So they're way in over their heads. They're too young to be doing what they're doing, and yeah. So from the sculpting, I'll just move on to low poly and unwrapping, which I'll do all in 3ds Max. So you end up with something like that. That's just the rigged version.
Hmm. And is this all one piece? Do you allow multiple pieces and just interpenetration? How do you work that?
Yeah, I generally have everything split up as much as possible.
Hmm.
I think these days, in terms of budgets for characters, you can really afford to split off things that you couldn't before, like bolts and things like that. Oh, not on here. So yeah, in some places you can add a lot more detail, whereas you couldn't before.
Right.
Uh, so I'm generally trying to think like if this was in like a next gen game, right? And if the player is interfacing with this character in first person and that kind of thing.
Got it. And you don't worry about interpenetration of the belt, things of that nature. You just let the rigger handle that?
Well, there's always going to be some sort of like clipping and things like that,
Hmm.
but generally I'll keep it as clean as possible. When it comes to posing here, because it's not going to be rigged for a game,
Right.
I'll just like cheat and sculpt out some bits that are intersecting.
Yeah, that's great.
And if you're going to hand it over to a rigger and animator, then you got to be making sure that everything is as clean as possible, no intersection.
Hmm. And that's just in the base pose. So if you don't mind, I'd love to go back to the sculpting side of this, because if we look at that, what you were considering the sculpting, there's what software are you using? And really, what I'm getting at is, are you using Marvelous Designer? Or are you sculpting this all by hand? How's that working?
Well, for my own projects, I like to sculpt it all by hand, just because I really enjoy fold sculpting. It's just a lot of fun. It's like its own anatomical thing.
Yeah.
You've got like origins and insertions of folds.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It's just really satisfying.
That's great. So this is all hand sculpted.
Yeah, sorry, my ZBrush is taking a second to load. It's
Not
just
to worry.
coming.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so because it's all hand sculpted, it takes a while to do. Like for the Gambeson, like that was a couple of weeks of sculpting.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
and
it
a
really,
lot of reference.
yeah, and you're using, what kind of brushes are you using? What do you have here? You have chisel. Okay. What kind of brushes do you use for doing folds like this? Because this is definitely one of those art forms. Like I had a class with Steve Lord, and Steve Lord has this really cool way of doing them, and he starts with these like loose shapes, and then he refines it. But it looks like you're taking these farther than I've seen some of Steve's. This is looking really, really designed, quite beautiful.
Oh, thank you. So I'm mainly using the just a standard brush in conjunction with like a high smooth and H polish, just to really make them look solid.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't want that blobby effect when it comes to folds. You want it to look really nice and weighty, and polishing in those planes really helps with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there's no special brushes. It's just standard H polish and smooth.
Wow.
And then just, fan standard just for like the little ones and just adding in a bit of sharpness in some areas. But with this guy, it was mainly, those few.
That's great. Let's see the gloves real quick. Yeah. Yeah, awesome. And so in Damien's standard brush for some of the tight folds in the gambeson, right?
Yeah, and like on here, on like where the thumb joint is, and
yeah, got
just
it.
where you're getting really tight creases.
Now, this is one of the debates that we have. Do you consider Marvelous Designer an essential thing for a character artist?
I think in production, you won't be really able to avoid it, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I think for personal work, I don't know. I really think you should be, in general, sculpting your own folds, just because you learn so much from it.
Yeah.
I think Marvelous is great if you know what you're doing with it in the first place, because you need to know what the folds will look like. And I think you can only get a sense of that if you sculpt them yourselves.
Yeah, one of the techniques we have that we demo is you use Marvelous and then you clean them up, and you use H polish and things like that in standard brush. But these are really beautiful folds that you're starting off with. How about the creation of all the parts? Are you using Max to create some of the more hard surface elements around there, or are you just extracting these in ZBrush? And because you said you start with a blob but then polish it up.
So with like the hard surface things like the armor, I'll make the basic shape just as like a high poly mesh, as like making it like any other object, like a gun or something.
Yeah.
And then I'll bring
in Max.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can bring it up.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Sorry, let me just find it. So yeah, here we go. This is what it looks like before all the ZBrush stuff. So it's just basic high poly modeling. So I'll do like a concept sculpt in ZBrush, decimate it, bring it into Max, and then essentially trace over it.
Ah, okay. So you do start in ZBrush with some kind of rough element, probably using clay buildup or clay to pull something out, or no?
Yeah, exactly. Clay buildup and trim dynamic and a bit of dam standard as well, just to get those sharp edges. Just so I have something to work from.
Great.
It helps with like any organic modeling, sort of like organic shaped modeling, especially like armor.
Yeah. Do you? No, I didn't prep you for this, but do you have any early versions that you could show, just to give people a sense of what what it looks like in the early stages when they might be taking it too far?
No, I once saved a corrupted file a few years ago, and now I've made like a version every single time I work on it.
Yeah. My iterations, oh yeah, you've got the same iterations I do. You get like 200 plus iterations.
Yeah, like I think I actually ran out of space. I might leave with some of the really old ones, but
Yeah.
some.
One of my friends, Tomas Witzelbach, he's got, I think it was like 4 terabytes of quick saves, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, I think Pixelogic literally built a feature just for him to be able to put his quick saves on a hard drive.
Nice. So I mean, this is actually a bit later, but you can see all the armor's really like it just comes straight out of Max. It's not been worked on.
Yeah.
You can see like the belt, for example. Like this is what I
There we go.
start
Yeah.
with, and then into Max and just build over it.
Okay, good. That's a really good example. So just something simple so that you know what the proportions are, and
Yeah, exactly.
and then you go from there. Okay, I got that. That's pretty
Just
cool.
so I can be aware of like how the belt would sink into the gambeson and how it would intersect with the other belts.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Okay, and then is that just something you do with an extraction, subtool extraction, or do you use some other feature?
Yes, I think for this belt, for the belts, I used a subtle extraction. Generally, I'll just like plop a sphere in and move it around until it resembles it.
Cool. Okay. All right, that looks neat. Okay, so what is important in your mind for a character artist? So if I'm looking at this, if we look at this, and other people are looking at this and they're like, you know, this is just amazing. This looks beautiful. What is what are the elements that somebody needs to really master to be able to pull off good character art?
So a good, obviously good anatomy, that is the key thing. Everything's moving towards very realistic these days, so a strong knowledge of that is really important. For more designing your own characters, a thing you should be looking into is storytelling, and because it is just one big story essentially, your character. So you need to be thinking about not just what he looks like, or you know what the final thing is, just like what world do they belong to, how do they interact with other people. It'll all dictate your design and your character.
Yeah.
Is that right, or did you want more like technical answer?
Yeah, what else technically could we offer them? So anatomy, a sense of things connected and whatnot, and then what else, especially when you're looking at portfolios and you're reviewing things, what are you looking for?
Oh, right. So in terms of portfolio stuff, like properly completed projects, like all the way down to low poly and rendering and posing as well is important.
Yeah.
That will really help sell your character. Like I think just having like an A pose in your portfolio I think it's good enough, but to really stand out, I think a good pose does really help in a portfolio.
Okay, good pose. What about an anatomy, you said? And then what else let's start with the negative. What triggers you to say that somebody's a little bit more on the amateur side than the professional?
I think texturing immediately like springs up.
Yeah.
I've seen like really good modeling, but the texturing just lets it down. So I think a good focus on that can really help your model as well. I mean, Substance Designer and Painter now, we can make really amazing textures. So yeah, I think it's really important.
Yeah, that is very true. All right, so what do you see as the differences between stylized and realistic? You've kind of gone through both, and you do both today too, I think, because your lunch crunches are really kind of just really beautiful stylized pieces a lot of times.
Yeah, I like to jump between the two. I think if you just focus on realistic sculpts, you'll start to forget the sort of basic sort of shapes of like a stylized lip and what a stylized like cheekbone looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And like both like realistic sculpting and stylized sculpting will help you in both and each other.
Yeah, that's great. Can we head back over to your ArtStation real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so if we're looking at, like, let's say, I forget the name of the character. Wait, I'll pull up your ArtStation here. The Americamancer.
Oh, yeah. An old piece of work.
Yeah. So if we're looking at a piece like this, and all the sculpt, all the texturing, all the work that you've done on this, like what is it that, if you're looking back over this now, I'm sure you've got some things that you'd like to change, but like what is it that's important here and still really important that, you know, and good that you put into this work? And what I'm trying to do, and what I do often with my students, is I'm always trying to find like what are the triggers that helps somebody like yourself who looks at portfolios, things like that, helps them see, you know, that somebody's really hit the nail on the head and has what it takes. So I'm always looking, and I know it's hard to look at your own work, but if we're looking at this, what really communicates, you know, that this is kind of, you know, a professional piece that you really enjoy looking at in it? Does that question make sense?
Yes, I think so. So yeah, like before, I was saying, like a pose helps.
Yep.
To show that you've got skills outside just of the character art pipeline. Shows that you've got like real skills that helps. Lighting as well, like a well lit scene really helps as well. Just shows that you have like an artistic sense of how lighting is used in your characters.
Yeah. And it seems to be story. I mean, there's a massive story element to this, yeah?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What is the story behind this?
So with her, she was like a demon found during World War II by the Allies, and they recruited her to like resurrect soldiers in the battlefield. So yeah, that was her story.
Nice. Nice. So what's going on below her? Is she resurrecting?
Yeah, so she'd be like floating above the battlefield, and like dead soldiers like bursting out the ground, being like, "Revive me!"
Nice. Okay, that's awesome. So, you know, what do you like? Do you love to see stories like this in people's portfolio? Is this something that you think really helps their chances get a job, or is it something that's just really fun to do? You know, how does this fit into the whole job side of it?
Things with strong stories really do set characters apart from others.
Okay.
Like, you know, you see a million like knights in armor or, you know, dudes with guns, but to really set them apart, you need a story element to it. You need to be conveying more than that. Than this is just someone in a suit of armor.
Mm-hmm.
Something like
that. Where do you get your stories?
Just everywhere, really. Like what I'm playing at the moment, what I'm reading, what I'm watching. Like with this guy, he originally started off as like a Dark Souls fan art, but then I was reading all the Game of Thrones, and that all influenced that. And yeah, also, yeah, just a lot of influences from media, basically.
Mm-hmm. This kind of goes hand in hand with this because, you know, ideas are out there, but you trust yourself with your idea. And you trust yourself in this path because character art's such a long path. I think you said you start these things and you're not entirely sure. You know, you don't have an end game yet. It's more like a path. Was that what you said?
Yeah, so I've got like a vague idea in mind, like this character will be this, but the fun comes along the way where you like how things start to evolve, like from your original concept and what other ideas you get just along the way, because they take such a long time to do. You're doing so many other things that you'll get a lot of sort of influences along the way.
Okay, so along those lines then, how do you deal with confidence and following this path and keeping, working on these projects as you go through the ugly phase or things of that nature?
Yeah, there's always that part where you'll be working on it for months and then you look at it and you just think it's not there yet.
Yeah.
But to get through that, you just really you might have to go back to the drawing board and redo a few things, get some advice from friends or people online, even if it's just a little thing. Sometimes it can really help. Like, for example, on the Bloodborne character I did, she had a completely different lower half, and I showed it to my girlfriend and she was like, yeah, it's not really working. Try this style of trouser. And I was like, oh my God, this really works. And then that opened a whole path of styles and fashions I could look into. And then that really boosted that forward. So yeah, always ask people what your work is like. That really helps.
Yeah, great. So what advice do you give people when you do talks or when you're talking to people? What advice do you give them when they're looking to start this career as a game artist?
Advice. So yeah, just generally don't just focus on sculpting. I'd say look into drawing and painting as well, because it all feeds into the same set of skills. It all really helps to do it. In terms of actually getting a job as a character artist, look into other art avenues. Like, for example, I went into character art through asset art, and you could try and do it through environment art. Just always be making art.
Do you think it's fair to say that the most important thing is to get your foot in the door somewhere, and then you can move from department to department, project to project?
Yeah, that does really help. Once you get your foot in the door, then you start meeting people, you start talking to people. You start talking to people in positions that you want to be, and you find out from them. So yeah.
Cool. Well, along the lines of doing other things, Alejandro was asking about your lighting for this one, for the Lordling. What was your inspiration for developing this lighting? Rembrandt, or were you thinking classical painting, or what was on your mind with this?
Yeah, well, exactly that. So I was looking at Rembrandt paintings of kings and lords and princes, and just really taking inspiration from that. I'll just bring up some of the key images I had for that. So yeah, that really soft lighting. So yeah,
there we go.
This guy, and yeah, just the one key light,
Yep,
just above the head, and then it softens everything out below it.
nice. And did you render in Marmoset, Keyshot, Unreal?
It was in Marmoset.
Those guys do good. I love that team over at Marmoset. They are just awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing the results you get so quickly. It's really something.
Cool. All right. Well, if you don't mind, I would love to get your review or your thoughts on a couple of people's work. Is that possible?
Yeah, sure.
So if you go into the chat, right on it, we don't see that chat window, so it's just cold out of here. But you'll see Jason is the first one at 131. So I've asked them to post their art stations, and then they'll usually have work from their from the boot camp there. Yeah. So Jason's is the boot camp work is all the way to the left.
Cool. This one that you want to look at?
Yep.
Cool. So I really like the folds. They're very nice. Some nice anatomy.
That's a really nice hand.
Yeah. Very nice.
Cool.
So what's the plan with this character? Just to take it all away, or?
Jason, you can unmute yourself if you want to, Jason. Not hearing you if you're talking. But I'll speak while we're waiting for him to maybe type. Yeah, take it all the way into texture, into substance, and then into Marmoset. He's hooking up his mic right now as we speak. But yeah, the idea would be to get into the material separations, what's leather, what's fabric, what's skin, what's metal, all of that stuff, and then go from there. But where are we at on the low res to Jason? I can't remember.
Hey guys, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Hey Jason,
Okay.
yeah, I can hear you.
Hey, thanks a lot for looking at my work, Paul. I really appreciate it. Your work is awesome.
Thank you.
I am on everything's UV'd, and I'm right now laying those out and kind of splitting things up into the organic and material and leather. Just kind of separating those out. And I'm in substance right now, like working on eyes, and I've got the hands and head baked as well. So basically, just kind of approaching it, one section at a time.
So yeah. This would be the high resolution sculpt, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is the high resolution sculpt.
Okay,
that is finished. Yeah, except for hair.
Cool. It's looking very nice. The only thing I'd point out is just maybe have a look at the folds that are going into the cuffs, like how they're going in there, maybe.
Okay.
Just because they don't look like they're being pushed out by the cuff at the moment. Are you using Marvelous for that, or are you sculpting?
Yeah, it starts out in Marvelous, and then we go into ZBrush to kind of try to refine it, and,
right?
Finish the folds and sculpt it and everything. You lose a lot of resolution when you start to change the subdivision levels and things like that too. So.
Yeah, that's the only place I'd be wary of. But yeah, she's looking really nice.
Cool. All right.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks. All right. So after Jason, there's Andrew Churchill.
Cool. Sorry, I'm just scrolling. Oh, here we go.
And
nice. I'm looking at Female Warrior.
Yep. Yeah, that's the boot camp work.
Cool. Nice. So what's the plan with her? Is she going into low poly now, or are you still doing the high poly?
Andrew should be in the high poly at this point, but I'll wait.
Cool.
Andrew, you there? Okay. Might be plugging in the mic. Yes,
Hi.
there goes the
Can you
mic.
hear me?
Yep.
Hey guys.
Hey.
Yeah, so I was just saying, it's most of these images are high poly, but at the bottom you can see low poly. So I've just started texturing in Substance. So yes, it's going to be textured, posed, and all that hopefully.
Great.
Cool. Just a thing on the low poly. Just make sure your topology is following the flow of the fold, because otherwise, the minute that deforms, it's just going to like really break the fold.
Yeah.
This
I've adjusted it a little bit since, so this is slightly off at a year, but I see, like, yeah, in the middle character, the folds look really blocky. Yeah, so I've tried to adapt the low poly, yeah. But yeah, thank
you. Just a little bit, like maybe soften these areas out a bit, just so they lose that. You don't want that feeling of like a very generated fold. So just softening those out a bit will make them look a bit more natural.
Okay.
Otherwise, the face anatomy is really nice. Maybe I think the eyes are just a bit too far apart. I think maybe bring them in along with actually the rest of the face. It might just be a bit narrower.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. What's the story with her?
She's based on concept art from someone who works at Creative Assembly.
Okay,
so I
cool.
think she's kind of like a warrior bride. Oh yeah, here you go.
Nice. Are you planning on doing all the facial jewelry?
I'd like to, but like, it's very complicated. I want to, but yeah, I'll see how far I go. I kind of just want to get the basic character done, because there's a lot. I kind of hadn't really appreciated how complicated the character. Well, for me anyway, it's quite a detailed, complex character with all the details on the fabric. So yeah, possibly. What do you think?
I mean, that they look like so much fun to do. They look a lot more complicated than they are. So with this Bloodborne character I did, she's got like loads of little chains around her head. So that's just made from like just a repeating alpha just on a spline in 3ds Max.
Okay.
So so you don't have to like do it in ZBrush or anything first. You can just do it straight in the low poly. And then you can sculpt all the nice big pieces in between, and then just hook them all up. Yeah.
So do you do it in ZBrush first?
The little chains.
Yeah.
No, I just made like a high poly chain in Max, and then projected it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got you.
And got the alpha out of that, and then just set it all up Max. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, she's looking good.
Thanks.
Cool. All right, let's hit up Roberto Fernandez.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andrew. Man, every time I see this face of the Bloodborne Hunter, it's just like, God, that's so beautiful and expressive.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to have it like as if the players just walked in on her in like a room.
Yeah.
And she just turned around and been like, come face me.
So awesome.
Sorry, the chat window is tiny. I'm trying to look.
I know it is. It is. Here, I'll post it again.
Nice.
And there we go. All right.
Cool. I like that.
Yeah, that's fun.
Nice. What am I looking at? Which one?
Roberto, which one do you want him to look at? But I would pretty much look at the most recent. So I don't think we've got to the character out of the game arts yet.
No, I didn't put the character
So
there yet.
which one do you want him to look at?
Well, I have this leather jacket. It's the last one I did.
The one in the middle, leather jacket?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh yeah, this is for a test. So I remember that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So the key thing would be, just in the quick sense of like what's working, what's not working. If you see this, what tells you, that Roberto knows what he's doing, what tells you, that he's still a student,
Okay.
if anything.
So I like on the front, the folds sort of seem a bit vague, like in this area. I'm not sure if they were like hand sculpted after the Marvelous, but it sort of does show up against the Marvelous folds. What else? It sort of feels slightly like it's floating on him. I think maybe you'll have to work on conveying a more sort of weight to the jacket. Actually, let's have a look. So yeah, like you'll have these sort of larger folds coming off, which will give the leather a nice sense of weight to it. That is sort of missing from yours at the moment. I mean, other than that, the details are really nice. It does feel like a leather jacket, but I think it could just be pushed in the weight area a bit.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. What about the rendering? Do you think it's all right, or should I?
Sorry, you're really quiet. Let me just turn up my volume.
Oh, no, it's my mic probably.
Okay.
No, I was asking about the rendering. If it's okay like that, or I need to improve it.
Oh, the rendering.
Yes.
Oh, I see. Yeah, the rendering is a bit flat at the moment. What's your light setup? Is it just like one key light and then one rim light, or?
I just did it in Keyshot.
Oh, so it's just using like an HDRI
Yes,
to light it.
Yeah.
I see. So with the characters I made in Marmoset, I use the HDRI as a sort of just like general light at like a low intensity, and then I put in some Omni lights to focus the character more, so the lighting isn't as flat.
All right. Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So yeah, don't rely on the HDRI too much for the presentation.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that right?
Cool.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Cool.
Really helpful.
All right. Okay. If you got time, Paul, I'd love to just 2 more people.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So Rashid, I just posted that.
Yeah. Which one am I looking at? The character?
Let's look at the character real quick, see how long that is. I forgot how old that character is. That's 5 months ago. Okay, so that's before he came into the boot camp. And then the other one, in the boot camp, what we ask people to do is right off the bat, first thing is create a realistic prop so they get a win. So that's going to be this piece.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in this case, it's all in-game model. So that's the goal there. So if you don't mind, I'd love to hear like what you think is working and what's not working here.
So was this textured in Painter?
Pretty sure, if I remember right. Yeah, textured
Yes.
in Painter. Yeah. Ah, there's Rashid. Great.
Oh, hi, Rashid. So yeah, I really like the general material feel. It does feel like a nice rusted metal. I think what will really push it a bit more is some edge popping, like a bit more edge wear in some areas. Like, let me see if I can bring up. And my computer just waking up to Painter.
Oh, wow.
Cool. So yeah, edgeware really helps sell a metal as metal. It's just like one of those easy wins when it comes to texturing. I'm just turning off the edgeware now, which will take a second. It's because it's a really heavy scene. But yeah, you can see like it just loses all that pop.
Totally.
And then the minute that comes on, just like it all, like you just get all that back, right? And that's what's, I think, is missing from this piece at the moment. Like the base materials are there, it just needs that extra bit of pop.
That's brilliant. That's great.
Also, just going back to storytelling as well, like how has this been used? Like who's been like picking it up and it's been like thrown around or kicked or whatever. It could do with some sort of like I call it like hero damage, like sort of one sort of noticeable piece of wear that like tells a bit of a story. Like say there's like someone's knocked like something into it, there'd be just like a big like scratch across here or something like that. You can see, yeah, you can see. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right. So I see yours, Josh, but I'm going to head over to Matthew's real quick. And Matthew, tell me, how'd the art test go? Are you still in the art test?
Yeah, still doing the hard test for high res. I'm pretty much done with the high poly. And I'm going to be starting retopology hopefully tonight. So
Cool. All right, great. So all the way off to the right, left. I'm dyslexic. That's the project you did in class, working on focusing on stylized and with a name of Blizzard.
Cool. Yeah, I think I saw this around. So you're going for like the Blizzard hand painted style.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, something in line of like Overwatch or a lot of other Blizzard stuff.
Cool. So sorry, there's a good picture of some Overwatch stuff. So it's missing a bit of contrast in places. So like in these folds, you can like really go down and into darker saturated colors, and then on the tip, sort of lighter desaturated colors, which helps sell that like hand painterly look. Find an example from Overwatch. Yeah, you can see it's quite subtle. Like here, it's really dark well, not really dark, but it's like dark and saturated in the shadows. And you've got the nice highlights here that give a nice contrast. I think it will really help sell all the fur in the texturing. I think generally it might be a bit too, like slightly too desaturated. Like it might just need like a slight color boost in general.
Okay.
And also like a small cheat when it comes to hand painting stuff, like just an overall gradient, sort of like you can just apply a sort of like, be like darker here and then lighter up here, just like an overlay almost.
Yeah. On like the final render, or just on like the textures?
As like a base pass. So you're like, that's how you start texturing.
Okay.
So you can put it like on the bottom layer. Are you texturing it in 3D code or?
I've been using Substance Painter just to kind of do a lot of the painting.
Okay. So in Painter, you can actually do. You can add a gradient that's like a filter to it.
Ooh la la.
I don't know where I did it. Sorry, it's loading. Loading. So yeah, I was using it to make an anisotropic map for this, for the velvet on the dagger sheath.
Hmm.
So you can do it in Painter just by using the 3D linear gradient as a start, then overlay it with the gradient filter, and then you can choose your colors. So you can use that as a base layer. And it will take the, sorry?
Just taking notes, 3D linear gradient?
Yeah.
Okay.
So add that to like your base color, and then add a gradient filter on top of it. And it takes into account the position map that you
Okay.
can generate in Substance Painter.
Awesome.
Cool.
And then what's the direct impact of that?
So you can essentially, I'm trying to think of where I saw this. So it adds, you can have like a, sorry, let me just find the picture.
Yeah.
Just loading up Photoshop. So yeah, it means you can start with this as your base layer,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can, as you're hand painting, your lower sections will be naturally more darker because you'll be sampling the lower layer, and then your anything on like the higher up the character will be naturally brighter because you're sampling the lighter colors, and then
Yeah.
Awesome, because it's picking up the position.
yeah, because it uses the world space normals to make that gradient map.
Cool. Yeah.
I
Oh,
like
that makes sense.
How
Yeah,
much? Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Real quick, how much leeway does somebody have in your mind for what they need to do in the render versus what can they do in 2D just to touch it up?
So I try and do as little as possible in like post-process for renders,
Mm-hmm.
just because I think that stuff really does show up.
Yeah.
Especially if you do it badly, people will just see it immediately.
Right. Yes.
What I do in post-process, the only thing I really do is just add like a slight sharpen, just to pop things slightly.
Got it. Got it. Okay, that sounds great. All right, one more for you, and man, thank you so much for taking the time and doing this. I'm going to post it right now. It's Josh's, and thanks, Matthew, for sharing that. Good luck on the rest of that test.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. So, Josh, do you have a specific one you want him to review, or should you just look at the one that we finished in the boot camp, the phonogram? Yeah.
Hi. Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome. Okay. I thought if you could maybe just have a look at my texturing, just overall, and perhaps give me some insight on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, what, on the jacket or the phonograph?
Yeah, I think the jacket and the phonograph.
Cool.
I think.
So with clothing and really any material, to give it that sort of hyper-realistic look, you need to add a lot of color variation into texture, into the diffuse. So even though you might not see it, like, you sort of subconsciously see it. You see what I mean? So like even though the Lordling characters, Gammason is sort of like a dark blue, there's a lot of like little greens and like reds and yellows and just lots of slight hues that just add to the realism of it. And I think that really helps in selling a texture. I think maybe the lighting in the scene is blowing out the roughness a bit. It's making it look a bit sort of washed out. Maybe tone that down or push the roughness as well. Yeah, just in this guy here, like in his gloves, for example. So the leather's just got like loads of layers of just grunge that's different hues of brown, some blue, a bit of green. Yeah. So yeah, with the gramophone, the brass texture is really nice. The wooden box that is on top of could use some like damage on the edges where it's been bumped around, you know, where someone's like scraped it with another record or something like that. Just like some storytelling in how this has been used. That sound good?
Yeah, thank you so much for looking at it. It makes a lot of sense.
All right, if you don't mind, Paul, let's head back to your art station. I want to make sure everybody knows where to find you. Do you have any Gumroads? Do you do any training? Do you do anything on your own? If people wanted to learn more about you and more about your process, like where can we send them?
I'm not working on any tutorials at the moment. I'm pretty busy.
Yeah.
But I'm looking to doing it in the future, as a lot of people mentioned it. But yeah, you can find all my latest stuff on ArtStation. That's where I post it all.
All right. So you guys know, head over to ArtStation. It's Pav3D, and you'll be able to get right into it. And I need to add to that list. Watching your critique, you should absolutely teach. You have a very good way of presenting that knowledge. So yeah, I'd love to get anything you put on Gumroad or any classes you do myself. So really solid. Yeah. All right, guys, I'm going to have this up on the Guild and the usual place. You know the drill. Head over there. Let me know what you learned, one thing that you really picked up out of this conversation so that we have a sense of it. And we'll add Paul to the Guild so he can kind of see your guys' response. Thank you guys for coming in and for joining and for asking all your questions and all of that thing. I think the last question that just never really got answered was, you know, what's your timeline for creating characters? It's kind of the perennial question. But I'd like to ask it anyway.
Yeah. So this latest character took nearly a year to do, and that was just all in spare time.
Yeah, I love to hear that, you know, because I have the story of Niles. He's over at MVP now, Niles Rush, and he spent 6 months, 40 hours a week on one project.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we get people that they don't know this, and they're like, I should be done with the character in a week. It's like, yeah, maybe the hand, maybe, God.
Because yeah, you want to push it every time. Like it's another extra few months for every character. Like that Bloodborne one took 6 months, and so I wanted to push more details, so it took 10 months. Yeah.
Yeah, but it shows, and just like it's done. It's done at the highest level you can do, and those are absolutely gorgeous pieces. So.
Thanks, that's nice to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, my friend. Thank you so much. So great to meet you and hear a bit about your story and all that stuff. Have a fantastic evening.
You too. Thank you. It's been great being here. Thanks, guys, for your work.
Thanks. Take care. All right. Bye.
Thank you.